Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mental Health and Healing. We are having this beautiful episode today where we are talking about grief recovery. And as always, we are here today because we want to provide more tools for you to fill your healing box. So come and join the conversation because, as we all know, there has been times where we have gone through some things and we are grieving those things, and we're not quite sure if we are doing it right, even if that's something that we can even say there's a right way to do this. But what our goal tonight is to answer any questions that you have. So this is a conversation. Please chime in, type your questions into the comments so that we can answer those questions as we go. For all of you who have been following, you know that my name is Dr. Nicole Jackson, and I am your residential person who is here to help you fill your healing box with things that you can go to for years to come. All right. But today we have the pleasure of having beautiful Jill with us, and I'm going to let her go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jill Badiancilla. I am the founder and CEO of Together We Heal Community. This is a grief and loss resource website right now. I started this 2 years ago with just the intention of putting all the resources that are out there that we might not find very easily because you might be in one area and you sit down in your grief to Google something to help you, and you get everything all over the world, things that are not applicable to you, things that aren't in your area, and you just get lost. And so a couple of years ago, I pulled together a team, and we just decided to put everything that's out there all in one place, and we separated them into different types of loss. Loss through loss of a spouse, loss of a child, loss through miscarriage, loss through suicide, loss through divorce. And we feel like we took everything that would be helpful to the people in the Sacramento Elk Grove area, and put it all in one place. And then this spring, we did a support group, which was kind of a broad support group. We did a 6 months of meeting once a month, and it was led by 2 licensed clinicians, and that just ended. And we're hoping that we can continue to run different support groups for different age groups and different types of loss. So that's who I am, and what I'm trying to accomplish with this nonprofit.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having
Where do
me.
we start? Because this is a topic that not many people really talk about. A lot of
No.
people want to do this in silence, right? They want to recover because they don't believe that many people understand where they are. So I guess we can talk about what does a journey to grief recovery, what does it look like? How would you explain that to our
I
community?
I really think that everybody's journey is completely different. I lost my father when I was 16 months old, and I'm 45, and I'm still grieving. Not, I don't think that my grieving is debilitating. I've definitely gone through all of the stages back and forth. I haven't just lost my father. I've lost all of my grandparents, family members, friends, throughout my life. And so I, I find myself kind of running through my own journey. It's not the same every month. It's not the same every day. It doesn't go away. It just changes. And I have learned that I definitely have lived through the different stages, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to go back there. And I can't compare where I am to anybody else's. And I think, talking about it definitely has helped me. And I've seen it personally help other people that I've kind of helped along their own grief journey. The more we talk about it and have an open conversation about it, the more we can, I guess, share with each other, and then we don't feel like it's something we can't talk about. Yes, it's going to hurt. Yes, we're going to be sad. We can't get out of this life without losses and being sad and going through days where we
Absolutely.
don't really know what we're going to do next, and that's okay. But to be able to find a community, whether it's, maybe it's not in your family, because many generations within one family deal with grief differently. Some of them don't want to talk about it at all, and us as a younger generation, we're ready, and we want to talk about it, and we want to talk about it until we're blue in the face, and that's okay. But we might not get that from our elders in our family. So where else can we go?
Right. And it is difficult. One, it's difficult to even talk about it, right? Because it's a trauma that some people, just depending on what it is, believe that it's personal. And like you said, you don't believe that you can talk about it. You might have some family members that are like, well, that happened like 2 years, 10 years ago. Like, why are you still on it? Right? Because
exactly.
They handled it differently than you did. And I guess this is just to say that, like you said, it's different for everybody. No one can tell you how to travel your journey to grief, recovering from grief, and it is tied. It's definitely tied to the trauma, right? So if you're not even ready to deal with the trauma that occurred, you're really going to be in slow motion getting through that grief process. What do you think about that?
Grief is complicated. Everybody, I know, is it different for someone who was the caretaker of their spouse who was battling cancer for years and years and years? Is that different than what it looks like for someone who, left the house and then they get a phone call that day that their loved one was in a car accident and it's gone, they're gone. So, there's so many complications when it comes to different types of grief. And then we also don't really have a vocabulary for grief. There's people that say, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. And to some people that's fine, but others, they're so tired of hearing that. They're empty words. Or, oh, I know what you're going through. There's a whole list of things that certain people are very sensitive to. But what else are we given? How else can we take care of someone who has experienced a loss? Where is that information? How can we have an open conversation about it? One of the things I was looking at today was, it was a little graphic. It was drawn for children. Oh, I don't want to bring up so-and-so's name because I don't want to make them think about it. Well, they're thinking about it. They want you to bring that up because they want to talk about it. But instead, they're kind of hushed by you not bringing it up. And that's also hurtful. And they need to work through it. So if they're not working through it, it's just going to stay kind of hidden in a place where it's not getting dealt with.
So what I hear you saying is that it doesn't matter how old or how new it is. There's the need to actually go back to that place. And although it hurts, talking about it is actually what's going to carry you through it. One, because you get to process what happened, right? You get to process whatever that was. Was it a car accident? Was it an unexpected loss? Was it a loss of a child? Was it a loss of a parent? What was it? Right? And you will hear people a lot of times saying, well, if you continue to talk about it, it's going to continue to hurt. But the need to talk about it comes basically from the need to understand it, right? And processing it kind of brings an understanding that you kind of comfort yourself. And silencing someone when they are trying to grieve is you're taking their voice from them, and you're taking the right for them to, in some ways, grieve themselves.
Yes, and I don't want to generalize here, but I think a lot
Mhm.
of times when people want to silence you or say oh, I'm sorry for your loss, and then don't want to talk about it, is really them being uncomfortable with the conversation.
Right.
And one of the things that I always talk about when I'm talking to someone who is just having any kind of trouble, not lost through a death, but lost through a relationship, or
Uh-huh.
lost through what they expected their life to be like, is sometimes you just have to marinate in it. And in that,
Just a little
in
bit.
I mean, it's necessary. As much as you don't want to be where you are, and
You're there.
I use that word a lot. Sometimes you just have to marinate in it.
Yeah.
And during that time that you're marinating, I mean, I am deeply rooted in my faith. I am asking God, what does He want me to do at this moment? It might, and that answer might not come right away, but I'm here. God has me
Mhm.
here in this place so that I can work through it, not deny that it didn't happen, not to cover it up with a Band-Aid, but to work through it. So,
Yes. It's funny that you say not to cover it up with a Band-Aid, because I always tell everybody our job is to surgically remove what it is, right? Because
yeah,
if you can remove it surgically and with precision, then you have a better chance of recovering. And when it comes to trauma, what that looks like is the ability to actually not be ashamed to talk about how you're feeling, because you believe that you're going to be judged, because you're still grieving something that you should have let go of years ago, according to someone else
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
their opinion, right? I love it. We don't do band-aids. Band-aids fall off. Your tears fall, they get soggy,
mm-hmm.
and then they disappear.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah,
disappear. I mean, and when you do that, it's kind of like you're suppressing, and we want to avoid suppressing things as well. You
I
know?
think it's I think it's really important to kind of bring everything to light, and then what and here's where the coping comes in. The coping mechanisms don't work the same for everybody. So just like,
Oh,
we learn differently, maybe we learn visually, maybe we learn kinesthetically, we cope differently. So what might be helpful for me, maybe journaling. I have a therapist
yes.
here in Elk Grove who teaches a class on grief journaling. Maybe that's something that really interests you, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe you want something else. Maybe you want one-on-one therapy, which isn't, a lot of people have a stigma with therapy that, well, then I'm admitting something's wrong with me. Well, let me just cut to the chase. Something's wrong with all of us. I mean, we're all broken.
Right.
So there is no
Whatever it
shame.
is.
Yeah, and there's no shame in admitting that and wanting to make your life better. There is a lot of trouble in this world. We're not getting out of it without hurt and pain and loss. No matter how much we try to protect our children from pain, it will be inevitable. So,
Right.
are we going to teach them how to cope with that, or are we going to take away that advantage? And then what? They're helpless. So not only and I kind of shifted it to kids, but
No, but
when
you know what? I'm glad you did, because you brought up like a amazing point, that if we as adults don't know how to recover from loss, then we're setting a precedent for our children and generations down the road, and how to not deal with it, and how to suppress it, and then how they're going to pass that on. It's just going to keep going, so the cycle has to stop somewhere. So you had a good point shifting it to children, because that becomes very important as we move forward and in the recovery process. If a parent really thinks about when they're going through something and they're having these emotions, how quick their children are, it's like like they stick
watch
to
us.
them, and they're watching, and they're feeling the same way you're feeling, and they have no clue how to process this. So they're taking their cues from you on how to get through this process. So you have a very good point there. Yes, ma'am.
That's why, and that on our website, we have a loss of a parent page, and obviously we all experience that loss, but I'm sensitive to losing a parent as a child, because children, when my father passed away, I didn't have the vocabulary to express my emotions, because I didn't even know what I was feeling. So on my loss of a parent page, I actually have children's books to read with your child, because so if you lost a family member, you're experiencing a loss, but so is your child. So again, we're having to kind of compartmentalize, oh, here's what I need for me, but what does my child need? Or,
Right.
What does my younger sibling need, or something? So I think it's important to look at everything that's out there, and know that this is going to work for me, but have that conversation. How do you feel about these coping skills? What out of all these coping skills looks enticing to you? What might work for you? And they might try it and not be ready, and that's okay too.
Right. So let's go back to talking about the stages of grief. What does that look like, so people can understand when they're feeling it, what it looks like, where they are?
Well, I think it's important. I am a big fan of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler. I went and saw him talk, and he co-authored several books with her. And he actually just came out with a new book. I have it here because I had to get it.
Okay.
It's called Finding Meaning.
Uh-oh. Can we see that? Okay.
Oh,
Oh,
hey.
go that way. There you go.
The 6th stage of grief. So, on top of the 5 stages of grief that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross came up with, the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, and the acceptance, he added, which is very interesting, because I read it and I went, oh, that's me. It's the purpose.
Yeah.
The 6th, and he talked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's family. She has passed away since they co-authored their last book together, and he asked them permission to add a 6th stage of grief, which is purpose, because I'm in that stage, and I'm 45.
Explain that stage. Some people might not understand it.
I think that, again, the stages of grief, you don't have to start with the first one, which is anger.
True. No.
You can start at any of them and flip-flop back and forth multiple times. And I think to allow ourselves to be in whatever stage we are is necessary, and know that it's not up to anybody. You don't have to explain yourself and where you are in your grief to anybody.
And
Even
also, there's no time limit. Like, there's no
No.
time limit for how long it takes you to be there and
No.
process through it.
No.
It's
I
personal.
remember, so I obviously lost my father before I could really even know him. I was so young, and he passed away just, again, left the house one day, and he got in a plane accident and was gone. So I remember over the years, my parents, my mom remarried when I was 3 years old to a wonderful man who I call my dad. He's not my stepdad, he's my dad. So I'm just so blessed to have my parents provide therapy for myself throughout my childhood and young adulthood. I had that benefit of, not feeling like something was wrong with me because I saw a therapist. So, but I remember going through my own stages of being mad at God, being sitting at my dad's grave and crying, and being mad at him for having a family but going out and taking a risk. He died in an airplane accident, and he was doing tricks. And I think, well, as a parent, that wasn't very responsible. So I found myself kind of, I don't know if I could ever recognize a time even where I was depressed
Mm-hmm.
because of the loss of my father. As an adult, I've lost my grandmother, who was one of my best friends, and then
Mm-hmm.
recently lost my uncle, who was very involved. I loved him, and he went too soon. But I don't think I personally experienced depression.
Got it.
So there lies the fact that you don't maybe have to touch every single phase in order to be complete. And are we ever
Ooh.
complete in grieving? So, but definitely went through the stages over and over my life. And what I realized as a 42-year-old when this idea came to me to start Together We Heal community was that most days I'm pretty good, but I still go through times where I'm not. And I went through
Mm-hmm.
great therapy. And there are people that experience loss who, for one reason or another, don't seek help, don't talk about it. And I want to change that. I want to change people's opportunities for healing. I don't want them to just think, well, they're gone, and so here's my life, and that's it. This is how it's going to be.
Right. So what I hear you saying is that in this process, no matter where you are, try to reach out and build a community and try to connect with people who have been where you are so that you can actually get to that level of comfortability where you're like, I can talk about this and it is okay to talk about it, even if it's not with the family who has experienced the same loss that you've experienced. Right.
Correct. There are the people that came to our support group in person for the first 3 months. I heard a lot of them say, I've never talked about this with anyone because no one allowed them to. And I said, well, look at that. You came in and 12 strangers were sitting in front of you, and now we're not strangers anymore. So here is an opportunity for us to be your sounding board, or us to be, a shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to find your people.
Yes. Find
So,
your people, find your person, find your something.
yeah.
Right.
And then going back to the stages with purpose might not be right away, but if you look at how many nonprofits were started out of grief, the moms, the mothers of drunk drivers, or MAD, the
Mm-hmm.
MADD, mothers of drunk drivers. There's so many organizations that were started because it was someone that lost somebody and they wanted
Yeah.
to do something with that pain. It's finding a purpose for your pain. I don't believe that God intends us to go through this pain and not use it. So whatever it is, however that looks for you, that's up to you. And it's such a wide open field. I created this nonprofit thinking it might look a little differently. And just over the years, it has morphed into something, and it's still morphing. And there's still more people becoming involved in that purpose and finding their own purpose in it, through the flowers and through
I was
helping me
going to
with the
mention the flowers. Okay, you
yes.
guys, listen to this. Jill clearly had this amazing brainchild of selflessness because she has a flower farm, right? So to speak,
Yes.
where you can go and you can ask for flowers to take them for free to someone who is grieving and someone who went through something. When I heard
Mm-hmm.
about that, I was like, that is amazing. Tell us more about that.
Well, first, I truly believe that everything that's come into play with the flowers and the nonprofit, God was setting up in my life years and years and years ago. From my major in college was psychology, and I switched after I graduated. I switched and got my teaching credential and my master's in education. And I thought, oh, I'm not even using this degree, but yes, I am. I am now.
You are.
And so And the flowers, I've always loved flowers. My grandmother grew flowers in her yard, and I've always been drawn to them. My first job was in a flower shop. Something about my big sense that drives me is my sense of smell. And so, certain senses can trigger memories.
Mhm.
And I'm always drawn to flowers and nature and the smell that they create. And so I volunteer at this local farm, Stone Lake Farms. Cliff Wilcox is the owner of the farm. I do not own the farm. And I've been volunteering out there for 6 or 7 years. And 3 years ago, I just asked him if I could start growing some flowers. What made me ask that question? I don't know, other than God. And so I started growing flowers. It was just me. It's hard. I plant them by seed, and then I transplant them into the ground, and then I tend them and try to, not let the weeds overcome the flowers. And I started just giving them to people, just to spread joy, just giving them to whomever I can give them to, neighbors, friends, local business owner friends. And then last year it got a little bit more organized. And then this year I said, this is it. I'm bringing in volunteers so that I can have a handle on these weeds. We have 600 feet of flowers,
Wow.
very little weeds, because I have amazing volunteers that have really, one of the things about the farm is it's magical. When you go out there, there is a sense of calm. You hear the birds, you hear the leaves in the wind. It's so quiet out there, and I thought this is a place where I can talk to God and heal. And if I can, then so can others. So right now I have a team of volunteers, and every week we pick these flowers, we arrange them in mason jars, and then we bring them to a local coffee shop to give away. So there are people that request them. I have a flower request form in many different places. But then also, if you go to Savvy House Coffee Bar in Elk Grove, I bring as many flowers as we can. And if the card doesn't have a name on them, you can take one. And I encourage you to, they're not going to change your circumstances, but they're a gift. They're a gift that God said, you need to do this. Like he tells me with everything, you need to do this.
It may not change their circumstance, but let's be honest that it something that appears so simple can be the difference of a good day and a bad day, and
Yeah.
bringing joy to someone who has experienced a moment where they didn't believe that there could be more joy. You know what I mean? So I think that's the magic part of that. We had several people actually make some comments. Here's one of them.
Oh, Jill. She's one of my volunteers, actually.
Yes,
She's
yes, it's
she's been
important.
with me. She's been with me from the beginning.
It's important to find family and friends who support in the way you need before you need the support, if possible. And she says that you are one of her support people. Jill, you are right. It's important to build that support system prior to actually needing that support system. Like, if that's some advice, that's like, that just hits like home. That is the foundation of
Mhm.
building a support system, making sure things are in place before you actually need them, so that you're not
Mhm.
frantically searching for someone when something is not right. Right?
I, in a perfect world, right? If in a perfect world we do things in the right order, um,
In a
but
perfect world.
yeah, I am. I feel like I am an open book. I'm always willing to talk about my experience, and what I have found is when you start talking about your own pain, and where you are, it encourages others to do the same. So,
Absolutely.
and I met Jill, the other Jill, 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and we just clicked on so many levels. And she is my people. She is my people, and I have leaned on her too, and she's done amazing things to help my grief resource, my
Right.
website. She's all over it. She's necessary.
And I also believe that it doesn't have to necessarily be a perfect world to build that support, because you're building it sometimes without even knowing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
It's a
it's
safe
just,
place, safe people,
yeah, safe place,
surrounding
safe
yourself.
people, but
I think,
also,
go ahead.
go ahead, but also recovery is intentional, right? It's absolutely intentional. It's not something that we happen upon. It's not.
No.
It although it seems hard, we actually have to put the effort and the work in there. And I know at
Absolutely.
one point we talked about coping mechanisms, right? Um, Again, I like to always add tools to our community's healing box. And one of the things that you mentioned as a way to start your journey and coping mechanisms was journaling, right? But that
Mm-hmm.
other part is actually building building your support system, whatever that looks like, starting with one person and then building and building that on. The other is seeking therapeutic services, right? And
Yes.
not having shame that that's what you had, that's what you have to do, because in the end you have to do what you have to do in order to feel better. There was actually this one right here. We were talking about it, and it says, yes, this is true, talking about it so I can process it has helped me, and it's how I'm able to make it through,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
I will also add to that um, you might experience an interaction with somebody when you're trying to talk about it and they
mhm.
don't make you feel good, and it's okay to not talk
Yeah.
to them anymore. I mean, it's
Listen, that goes down to picking your support system and picking a
mhm,
healthy support system.
yeah.
It is okay to walk away from someone who is just not getting it. And
Mhm.
it's not to say that you just want to talk to people who are going to tell you what you want to hear, right? Because that's not how it works. There can be some people in your support system who tell you things you don't want to hear, but in the end, when you think back on it, it's actually helpful and beneficial to your recovery towards
Yeah.
grieving.
I think you have to be really open and honest with yourself when you
Hmm.
get feedback from the people that you think are your support system.
Right.
Um, they're in your, they understand you, they want to support you no matter what your decision is. So
Mhm.
if they don't like, they give you their opinion and then you don't take it and then they get upset, um, it's okay to walk away from that. Um,
Mhm.
Recovery and healing, it has to be done from a very raw place. And if you are not able to get to that raw place, or if you're told not to go there, it's just out of complete brokenness, bottom of the barrel. That's when your healing starts. It cannot happen if you are not 100% honest with yourself, and with whomever you're working with, if it's a support group or if it's close family, friends, therapists.
Mhm.
If you cannot dig down deep and get to those raw places, you're not going to get to where you want to be. we
No.
the goal is to, we are constantly living with grief, but we can be joyful. we
Yes.
we can, we have this loss and we carry the memories of the people that we've lost with us, and they built us into who we are.
Yes.
And we need to honor them through living our lives in the way that we know they would want us to. So that's joyfully. We are meant to live joyfully even in the midst of pain and hurt and loss. So we are not meant to stay there. God did not
And
create us to stay there.
no, and in order to get past it, you bring up a good point that you have to get to that raw place. There are many times when people would be like, I'm okay, but you're not okay. and you're not being honest with yourself. So one of the tools that you definitely can add to your healing box is being honest with yourself. Because until you can be honest with yourself about where you are in this grieving process, no matter who you talk to, whether professional or friend, they're not going to be able to help you, because the information that they're pouring in is just going to sit on the top. It's not going to sink in, because you're actually, when you're denying yourself the truth, you're not opening yourself up to absorb everything else that's going to help you heal.
Yes,
So
and those raw places are not just where you think they are.
yeah,
It's important for you to acknowledge what's happening all over your body, because we hold those emotions. Everybody holds those things in different places of their body. And that's
yes,
one of the things that Jill Weston taught me
yeah,
was, you might think, if you really pay attention to your raw places, my raw place is in my gut and my hips. That might not be yours, but Jill Weston taught me through, she does yoga nidra, and she's done several sessions for me on grief for Together We Heal community. And she helped me access the parts of my body that hold on to my pain. And it's important for you to acknowledge that you might be holding your pain in different parts of your body. And when you can access those and allow yourself permission to let go of them, that is so powerful. One of my experiences when I was with Jill Weston, of Breathing Space, was she was guiding us through a meditation. And all it really is scanning your body to see where you hold on to pain.
absolute mindfulness. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. And a lot of people, when they're grieving, they don't think, oh, well, my stomach is upset and I've had heartburn for 2 months now. And, but they don't pay attention to what they eat, and they don't pay attention to what they're taking in, as far as water and sleep and
right.
self-care. And then it can morph into more serious problems. But so if you can become familiar with the places in your body that hold on to those and then pay attention to them, I think that's also part of healing those raw
It is.
places.
It absolutely is part of healing in raw places. Um, for me, I know that it definitely is in the stomach area, and the need to actually, it's in the core actually. So the
Mm-hmm.
need to relax my entire body in order to get past those things. Deep breaths. I talk a lot about deep breathing, because your breath is your life, and more than just the daily inhaling, exhaling of air. Um,
Yes. And not even being aware of that. I mean, when's the last time you took a very deep cleansing breath in and
right.
held it for 5 seconds and then let it out slowly? I mean, that, even you feel it in your veins. I feel it pulse through my veins. But it's important for us to know that there isn't just one way of healing,
Hmm.
and to be open to maybe a little something outside of your comfort zone, outside
Yes.
of what you might think is what healing is supposed to look like.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
because you never know, but you have to be vulnerable, in
There
trying
goes
new
that word
things.
again.
Yes, I mean,
There,
Brene Brown has made that word very, very popular these days. But being vulnerable is necessary.
and being vulnerable to yourself.
Hmm. Oh yeah, we
Like,
don't want to tell ourselves things. I mean, we can hide the truth from our own gut, and be very successful for a while. But in the end, you have to be honest with yourself. Sometimes it takes a pivot, you know.
sometimes you're like, yeah, no, that's not what it is. I
It
am
changes hard. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, it changes hard. It's work. You
It's
know,
a lot of work.
sometimes we're up, we're up to here with work and we just want to kind of shove it to the side, but it
Mm,
will come back. That's the thing about grief. You can shove it to the side for a
mhm.
while,
And then you can
but
hear a sound or smell
yeah,
something or see
yes,
something or anything else that's going to call it to surface when you least expect it. And then
yes.
here we are starting over again.
Hmm.
And it almost takes more work to suppress it than it does to actually deal with it.
Well, it prolongs your life,
Mhm.
happiness, joyfulness. It prolongs those things.
Mhm.
Um, but definitely having a toolbox of multiple things is
Yes,
important.
it is.
I have I kind of love Pinterest a
Just a
lot,
little bit.
a little bit. I do have a Pinterest page on grief and loss, and I try to pin date. Like, there's lots of activities,
Mhm.
books, journal prompts,
So
quotes.
what kind of activities do you post?
Things like uh, self-care activities,
Mhm.
memory, like, what are ways that you can honor your loved one? Was it something that they really enjoyed? Maybe that's something you want to take up as a hobby.
Mhm.
Um, Especially for kids, drawing, be able to express themselves through drawing, journaling, movement, dance, music.
Mhm.
Music is very powerful, and
It is.
just giving the kids as many opportunities to talk about, especially kind of when they're not really thinking that you're putting them through some sort of therapy.
Right.
Talking and drawing about, their loved one, what their favorite memories were. um, Maybe you're starting new traditions, traditions that you did with that loved one, but you want to continue to honor them. I have a close friend who lost her husband to cancer 3 years ago, and
Mhm.
they, as a new family of three, have created very meaningful traditions that honor her husband. She's just a pillar of strength, and she's the first one to say, "I'm not strong all the time." She's
Right.
very vocal about sharing where she is. Some days she's here, some days she's here. Um, and so I think that finding um, finding activities, again, that work for you, and if you're not digging it, that's okay. There's plenty more, and you can search that on Pinterest yourself. You don't even need to find my grief and loss board. There's Google and
Right.
Pinterest and Facebook. I mean, all you have to do is type in a few search words. Grief coping skills, grief and memory activities, or something like
Mhm.
that. There's a ton, and I think that you have to try them out. You have to try them
Yeah,
out.
you really do. One thing that I really, even looking at this and talking about coping skills and stuff like this, I hear a lot of people say time heals.
Hmm.
And we had a discussion about it not being time that heals. What is your thoughts on that?
One of my thoughts on time heals is, whose time? The person that's experiencing it, the friend of the person that's experiencing it. What magic number is that time? Is it a year? Is it 6 months? I've heard a lot of people say, you know, I got a lot of help right at the beginning. There was a meal train started for me, and people would visit me and check in on me and send me
Mhm.
texts and ask how I'm doing. And then now I don't hear from them at all.
Nothing.
And because they think, oh, the anniversary, oh, it's been a year, you're good, right? You're good. Because I'm good. Because it's not me. I mean, I'm sorry for you, but it's out of sight, out of mind. And no one can tell you when is the right time to, and I don't even like the term move on. There's no moving on. You move forward, you learn to live with grief in your own way. but no one should put a time limit on that. There just isn't. It's arbitrary.
And I look at it as when it, we put time doesn't heal trauma. I look at it as acceptance and dealing with it, heals that aspect, right? And a lot of times you'll.
Oh, sorry.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
It's taken, my dad died when I was 16 months, and it took 42 years for me to get to a place where I felt comfortable in my grief. And then, I mean, it's kind of weird, I guess, that I'm so willing and open to talk about grief because it's not an easy subject, but I'll talk about it to anybody. And I feel like that's the grief working for me. There's my sixth stage. But I don't think that it can't be, a number can't be put on anyone. And again, you can't compare yourself to where someone else is in their grief.
Right. And no, you can't. And in general, some people feel like, and I think what it is some people feel like at one point they don't grieve anymore. Like they are okay. Like that emotion of it is gone. And yes, they have the memory, but they've been able to actually replace the sadness and the grieving process with what they consider to be happy moments and happy times. So there are some people who they move on, and that, like you said, your grief now works for you because it has driven you to be out here and help other people begin their journey and begin to heal however that looks for them, right? And then again, there are those people who are like, you know what, yes, I lost this person. Yes, from time to time that a smell will come and it will bring back this, this memory, but I'm okay. Like, I'm not angry. I'm not sad. I'm not going through the stages any longer. So I guess I say that to say that there is the hope out there for people who really don't want to have, to work those stages any longer, knowing that there is, just depending on what you put in place for yourself and what your support system looks like, you're able to get there and not have to go through those stages continually.
I like that word, hope. One of the ways that I describe my grief now is it's not as sharp. And when I think about my grief, I actually think a lot about the people that I've lost in the more recent years. And because I did not remember my father. I think the memories that I had were memories that my mind made up from hearing stories of other people talking about him and how he was with me. But for instance, my grandmother, she's been gone, I think 8 years, and I miss her so much. And I kind of still feel that when I think about her, and I hear certain songs, and it reminds me of our time together, like her teaching me guitar and making me do it over and over and over and over and over again. And I hear that song and I think, oh, like it's a little bit of a dagger in my heart. But it's not as sharp as it was in the beginning. And I think that's something to know, that grief won't always feel so physically painful.
Right.
So there is hope that you can get to a part of your grief that isn't so debilitating.
Right. And how
but when that's not right.
That's not, but that's like any trauma that you experience, right? So let's take it to even say the ability to not just survive the situation that's causing you to grieve, but actually to be able to thrive past that, right? Over time, you just begin to become more resilient past that trauma and you're able to just thrive through it and be okay. And if something does come up to trigger that memory, you are consciously and intentionally implementing things that you know how to do to make it not so painful physically and even on the emotional level. So with any recovery, we're looking for people to be thriving, right? And with you, although you still feel that pain, you've turned your pain into um, help for others, right?
Yes.
Which helps you thrive on a daily basis because you know that what you're doing is going to help somebody get maybe through what they're going through a little faster.
Absolutely.
Or
And it kind of comes full circle. And I don't, when I say full circle, I mean the purpose that has come out of this is beyond. I almost can't even believe that it happened the way that I will tell you one story. It took me several years to get nonprofit status, kind of because I do a million things and I wasn't putting it first and foremost. And when it came time to finally open up a bank account for the nonprofit, I wasn't paying attention to the date. And when I signed the papers and they told me the date so I could put the date next to my signature, it ended up being the 44th anniversary of my father's death.
whoa.
Which was, it was full circle to me. You know, and it's 44 years.
Wow.
So, I mean, don't be discouraged if 6 months goes by, 5 years goes by, and you're still not where you want to be. You just have to keep digging. You have to still, you know, then what you've been doing isn't working. Okay, that doesn't mean it's a failure. It just means you haven't found what is working, and keep digging.
Right.
So, and it doesn't matter. You kind of can't feel guilty for being where you are, or let others make you feel guilty or shameful for where you are. But know that, you know, for me, it's God's been working in me this whole time. He's been setting everything up like a big giant puzzle.
All right. So the takeaways from today is it is okay to take your time in your grieving process. You may not even hit every stage of that process, but in the meantime, as you're going through it, make sure that you pull out some of these tools to help you. Whether it's journaling, you may not want to write it, you can get a recorder and talk it. You can record yourself on a video, whatever it is. If you're not ready to have this conversation with people because there's times people have made you feel bad, I can't express how important journaling is, or just recording yourself talking your feelings. Most people be like, "Oh my God, that makes me seem like there's something really wrong with me," but it doesn't. It is you finding the space and time to empty you so that you can actually move on to where you want to be in your journey. Also, make sure you build a community. Community is so important when you're dealing with any kind of trauma, and especially trauma that's going to cause you to grieve. And some of that grieving is just going to be for yourself because it may be something that has happened to you. It may not be a loss of a parent, a loved one, a car, a house. It could be that you were violated, you were abused as a child, you were sexually abused, or whatever else it is. The grieving doesn't just mean that you're grieving for someone else. And don't allow anybody to take that from you. If you have a community of people who can support you and really tell you that it is okay, and sometimes just listen until you need them to speak, then that's okay. But be careful with whom you put in your community, and make sure it is a community with a strong foundation of people who understand that it is a process and the journey is personal. Um, if you would love to connect with Jill so that you can get to the flower farm or find out how flowers can be delivered to someone who has experienced a a situation which would be causing them grief, to grieve, or you just feel like you need to make somebody happy, go
Yep.
ahead and go to the website togetherwehealcommunity.com. There's a Google form that you're able to fill out and make
Yes.
that connection. You're on Instagram as well, right? And Facebook?
Correct. I am on both. I Same name, Together We Heal Community. I'm on Facebook. I just started my Instagram account. I had a little bit of a delay in starting that because I was struggling with what I would put on there. But the form, the request form, is in the bio of both of those, as well as in the community resources section of togetherwehealcommunity.com.
Okay. And for those of you guys who are interested in having a individual session with myself, please go ahead and reach out to this information right here in Jackson at NicoleSJackson.com. You can go ahead and email me and I will respond promptly, and we can discuss what those sessions will look like. Listen, everyone, thank you to those who continue to follow and be part of this community. Welcome to those who are new to this community. Stay connected because we are going to bring you so much more. Because my goal is to make sure you have a healing box that is overflowing, that you can reach into for any situation that you may face. And remember, resilience is a journey to healing, and it is so, so personal, and it's during your own time. But the goal is to get you to the other side of your trauma much better than you started, no matter how long it takes you to get there. Please have a good evening, and thank you so much for tuning in.